You finish a meal you have eaten your whole life, and something feels different. Not pain exactly, just a heaviness that sits wrong, a fullness that lingers. Food that used to move through effortlessly now feels like it stalled somewhere and forgot to keep going. If you know exactly what that feeling is, this video was made for you. Most people do what feels logical. They blame age. They reach for an antacid. They cut out foods they love and accept it as the price of getting older. But here is what the research is now specific enough to say: that feeling is not aging. It is the predictable result of something that quietly disappeared from the American diet within your lifetime. Something every culture on Earth used for thousands of years to keep digestion working exactly the way it was designed to. Today, we are covering 7 fermented foods that can begin to restore it. Some you have heard of, at least 2 will genuinely surprise you. And we are closing with a simple daily routine you can start tomorrow. Stay with me. 1 minute of context before the foods, because understanding why digestion changes after 60 is what makes everything that follows land as a real answer, not just an interesting list. 4 things happen after 60 that do not happen at 40. Stomach acid declines. And this one surprises most people because the bloating, the heaviness after meals, the slow digestion that millions of people manage with antacids is, in most cases, a symptom of too little acid, not too much. Antacids suppress the symptom while making the underlying problem worse over time. The gut microbiome shrinks. Adults over 60 can lose up to 40% of their beneficial bacterial strains. Less diversity means slower digestion, weaker immunity, and less production of the compounds that keep the gut lining intact. The gut lining thins. When it becomes more permeable, digestion grows less efficient and systemic inflammation increases, which connects directly to the joint pain, brain fog, and fatigue that so many people over 60 experience and never think to trace back to their gut. And digestive enzymes slow down. Less enzyme activity means more of what you eat passes through without being fully broken down or absorbed. Those 4 changes are real and documented. Every food on this list targets at least one of them directly. Food 1. Kefir. Most people who know kefir think of it as drinkable yogurt, a little stronger, a little better for the gut. That framing undersells it significantly. Kefir is made by adding live kefir grains, clusters of bacteria, and yeast into fresh milk and fermenting it for about 24 hours. What you get contains up to 61 distinct strains of beneficial bacteria and yeast. The average probiotic supplement delivers between 2 and 10. For digestion specifically, those strains repopulate multiple layers of the gut simultaneously. Bacteria that improve motility, bacteria that reduce intestinal inflammation, and bacteria that produce the short-chain fatty acids that repair the gut lining itself. And here is the detail most people miss. Fermentation breaks down nearly all the lactose in the milk. So the majority of people who avoid dairy because of discomfort can drink kefir without that discomfort. The fermentation has already done the digestive work for you. 1 cup daily, plain, full-fat, live culture. Not the sweetened commercial versions. The added sugar works directly against what the bacteria are trying to do. Food 2. Unpasteurized sauerkraut. Sauerkraut has spent decades being dismissed as a hot dog topping. That is one of the greatest nutritional undersells in American food culture. Properly fermented sauerkraut, shredded cabbage, salt, and thyme produces a live ecosystem of lactobacillus bacteria so concentrated that European physicians were prescribing it for digestive conditions centuries before the word probiotic was ever used. For anyone over 60 dealing with sluggish digestion, bloating, or food that just does not move the way it used to, Sauerkraut works on the root cause. It restores the bacterial population that regulates gut motility, reduces inflammation in the intestinal lining, and produces the compounds that repair the colon wall from the inside. Now, one distinction that matters more than almost anything else we will say today. Most sauerkraut in grocery store aisles has been pasteurized. Pasteurization kills every beneficial bacteria in the jar. What remains is acidic cabbage with no probiotic value. You need the refrigerated, unpasteurized kind, live cultures on the label, cloudy brine in the jar. That single distinction is the difference between medicine and a condiment. 2 to 3 forkfuls alongside a meal, simple and effective. Food 3. Apple, cider, vinegar with the mother. Walk into the kitchen of someone over 70 who still moves well, thinks clearly, and rarely sees a doctor, and there is a better than average chance you will find a bottle of this somewhere near the counter. Raw apple cider vinegar, unfiltered, unpasteurized, with that cloudy strand of live bacteria and enzymes at the bottom, stimulates stomach acid production, which means the bloating, the heavy feeling after meals, the slow digestion most people are managing with antacids. Apple cider vinegar targets the actual cause. Antacids suppress the symptom and deepen the deficiency. 3 outcomes the research supports most clearly for adults over 60. Reduced blood sugar spikes after meals. Better mineral absorption, because stomach acid is required to absorb the calcium, magnesium and zinc aging bodies are already at risk of losing, and measurable reductions in LDL cholesterol and triglycerides, 1 tablespoon in a full glass of water before meals, never straight. The acidity will damage tooth enamel over time, and always raw, unfiltered, with the mother. The clear versions have had the living part removed. Those first 3 are foods most people have at least heard of, but probably not understood at this level. The next 2 go somewhere most health content never takes this conversation. Stay with me, because food number 5 is the one that directly contradicts something a significant number of people over 60 were told, followed, and are still living with the consequences of today. Food 4. Fermented oats. If you eat oatmeal, and most people over 60 do because they were told to, you are already 90% of the way to one of the most effective things you can do for your digestion. The missing 10% is 12 hours. When oats soak overnight in water with a small amount of yogurt, kefir, or apple cider vinegar, lactofermentation begins. By morning, something has changed that cooking alone never achieves. Oats contain phytic acid, a compound that binds to minerals and prevents the body from absorbing them. Fermentation breaks it down almost entirely. The magnesium, zinc, and iron in your oatmeal that your body is likely not absorbing right now become available after an overnight soak. The beta-glucan fiber that makes oats valuable for cholesterol and blood sugar becomes more bioavailable after fermentation, not less. The instruction is almost unreasonably simple. Tonight, put your oats in a jar with water and a tablespoon of yogurt. Cover it. Leave it on the counter. Cook it normally in the morning. Same food. Dramatically different result. Food 5. Real sourdough. For most of human history, every loaf of bread ever baked was sourdough, not as a wellness trend, because wild fermentation was simply how bread was made before commercial yeast arrived in the 19th century and the food industry chose speed over nutrition. That shift away from 24-hour fermented bread toward fast-rise commercial loaves is one of the most consequential and least discussed changes in the American food supply. And the generation now managing gluten sensitivity, blood sugar spikes, and digestive distress after eating bread is living with the direct consequences of that shift. Here is the mechanism. Real sourdough ferments for 12 to 24 hours using a live culture of wild yeast and lactobacillus bacteria. During that time, the gluten proteins are partially pre-digested, which is why many people who struggle with commercial bread tolerate genuine sourdough without any discomfort. They are not gluten sensitive. They are fast rise bread sensitive. Phytic acid is also dramatically reduced during fermentation, the same mineral blocker we just covered in oats. And genuine sourdough produces a significantly lower glycemic response than conventional bread, meaning blood sugar rises more slowly after eating it. A direct benefit for anyone managing insulin sensitivity. One important distinction: most sourdough in commercial bakeries is not genuine sourdough. It is often conventional bread with added vinegar for flavor. Real sourdough has 4 ingredients: flour, water, salt, starter, and a long fermentation time. Read the label before you buy it. 2 foods left on this list. The first one surprises almost everyone who hears what it actually does inside the body. The second one closes this list in a way I think you will remember. Food 6. Beet kvass. Eastern European grandmothers kept a jar of beet kvass on the counter year-round, not because it was fashionable, because they watched it work, for digestion, for blood, for energy, across generations. Beet kvass is one of the simplest fermented foods on this list to make. Raw beets, cubed, salted water, 2 to 5 days of fermentation on the counter. What results is that deep red liquid, and the mechanism behind it is now well documented. Beets are one of the richest sources of natural nitrates. The body converts those nitrates into nitric oxide, a compound that relaxes and widens blood vessels, improving circulation to every organ, including the gut. For adults over 60, whose arterial flexibility naturally decreases with age, that effect is measurable and clinically relevant. But here is what puts beet kvass above plain beet juice. Fermentation adds live lactobacillus cultures that directly support gut health, while also increasing the bioavailability of betalains, the pigments that give beets their color, and that research connects to reduced inflammation and improved liver function. The liver matters here specifically. When the liver processes waste efficiently, digestion runs more smoothly, bloating decreases, and the body recovers faster from dietary stress. A small glass before a meal. Inexpensive to make. Substantive in what it delivers. Food 7. Fermented elderberry. This one closes the list the way the best medicine usually does, quietly, without a fancy label, and more effectively than most things sold in a bottle. Elderberries have been fermented into healing drinks across Appalachian communities, European villages, and Native American traditions for centuries. The berries themselves contain compounds documented to reduce the duration of illness, inhibit certain viruses from entering healthy cells, and deliver some of the highest antioxidant concentrations found in any fruit. Fermentation amplifies all of this, and in a way that commercial elderberry products cannot replicate. Elderberry syrup sold in health stores is heat processed. Heat destroys the live cultures entirely. What remains retains some of the original berry compounds, but none of the probiotic benefit. None of the living bacterial cultures that make fermented foods categorically different from processed ones. Fermented elderberry breaks down the berry's cellular structure, releasing its active compounds in forms the body absorbs faster and more completely. The bacteria produced during fermentation specifically target the gut lining, the thinning, permeable, intestinal wall we talked about at the very beginning of this video. The process is straightforward. Dried elderberries, water, a small amount of raw honey left to ferment at room temperature for 3 to 5 days. Appalachian grandmothers who fermented elderberries every fall and kept the resulting drink through winter were not following a recipe. They were following results. Results they had watched work across generations and before any laboratory arrived to explain why. Before we close, this is the part I promised at the beginning, not just the list. A simple daily routine built from what we covered. You do not need all 7. Research consistently shows that small amounts of several fermented foods daily outperforms large amounts of just one, because diversity of input builds diversity of microbial population, and that diversity is exactly what aging guts lose most and need most to restore. Morning. 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar with a mother in a full glass of water, 10 minutes before breakfast. With meals, 2 to 3 forkfuls of unpasteurized sauerkraut alongside lunch or dinner, daily. 1 cup of plain, full-fat, live culture kefir. Then add 1 more based on your specific situation. Beet kvass if circulation or blood pressure is a concern. Real sourdough if you want to bring bread back thoughtfully. Fermented oats if you want to improve what you are already eating without changing your routine at all. This is not an overhaul. It is a return to the way food worked before convenience replaced fermentation, before a generation of people were handed antacids for a problem their grandmothers solved with a jar and a little patience. 7 fermented foods, all of them real, all of them accessible, each one doing something specific for the 4 changes that happen to digestion after 60, the stomach acid decline, the microbiome loss, the thinning gut lining, the slowing enzymes that we covered at the start. The people who developed these foods did not have research journals. They had observation, generations of it. They watched what kept families well through hard winters and what did not. What restored strength after illness, what worked, and what they passed down in clay pots, fermenting crocks, and kitchen traditions that took minutes to maintain, was centuries of careful attention to what actually worked. That knowledge belongs to you now. Drop a comment and tell us which one you are starting with. Or, if you are already using any of these, tell us what you have noticed. Next week, we are covering the fermented foods research has directly linked to cognitive clarity, memory, and mood in adults over 60. 2 of them are already in your refrigerator. Subscribe so you do not miss it and bring someone you care about along. Because this kind of knowledge was never meant to be kept to yourself.